Hello, everyone. Welcome to our conversation today on the topic of death of hardware boxes and rise of the cloud. But before we get into the meat of the conversation today, first of all, I would like to introduce my guests. Head of Product at Cloudflare, Jen Taylor, and Head of Engineering at Cloudflare, Usman Muzaffar. Welcome both. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be here, Arun.
So it's going to be a fascinating conversation. I have no doubt about that. But you know what? I want to go and poke a little bit into something more fascinating, which is your backgrounds. So Jen, I'll start. You didn't expect this one, did you?
No. I was like, we're talking about boxes. We're not going to talk about me. We're going to talk about boxes. I'm here to talk about boxes.
Let's talk about you both a little bit for a couple of minutes. So Jen, you lead this team, awesome team at Cloudflare, building products across the table, so many things. What got you interested into building products?
You know, it's interesting. I think I've always had a lot of curiosity, and I've always had a lot of curiosity about people and sort of their motivations and what they do. Like as a kid, I was the kind of person you could put in the back of a taxi, and in 15 minutes, I'd have the driver's life story. Or you put me on a chairlift, and by the time you got to the top of the mountain, like I'd know why they were on vacation and what, you know. And I think that like as I grew up, I had started finding myself in a place where I had a lot of curiosity about how people built and ran their businesses. And I realized that as I started talking to people, I was really curious about the problems they were encountering and trying to find ways in which we could solve them. You know, I was fortunate enough to kind of come of age at a time when a lot of people were in this transformation of taking their businesses online. And so it kind of became this interesting niche for me in product management. I could kind of feed that curiosity. I love spending time with customers, talking to them about the problems they're trying to solve. But then I also really love collaborating. Like I was a team sport athlete all my life. And I really like that aspect of it. And I really like coming back into the office after having spent time with customers and collaborating with Usman, with the design team, and ideating on how we could solve these problems at scale. And so I think for me, it's really that kind of curiosity and that like yearn to find ways as a team to make things better.
So collaborating with Usman,
yes.
Partner in crime.
That's the main reson I come to work every day is to hang out with Jen and see.
I come to hang out with him.
See what Jen and her team have cooked up. I'm gonna assume the question you're about to ask me, Arun, is how did you get into engineering?
Yes.
So let me go ahead and take a shot at answering that. So I grew up a child of the 80s, and so was given an Apple II at a very formative age, right around middle school time, and was just like, okay, this is it. This is a whole other world to explore. It's like a Lego set that never runs out of pieces. You can build anything you imagine. The challenge in those days was just lack of information. It was such a big deal if someone would just hand you a book that taught you Pascal programming or something, and in between, I never thought of engineering as a career. I was actually studying medicine throughout most of university, but I still took engineering classes in college because I found it so fascinating. And like right at the time that I was supposed to be studying pathology and physiology, like Netscape 0.9 comes out, and I was just like, okay, I'm in the wrong racket, man. I gotta transfer. This is a way more interesting revolution that is happening. And so basically made my way out west, came to Silicon Valley, got to work with amazing people, and really got bit by the same thing that Jen is talking about, like this idea that it's not just ones and zeros on a screen. Like this actually solves real business problems, real people problems. I'm both humbled and ferociously proud of like how much Cloudflare helps the world operate and do their job, and that's just extraordinary. And so that it's very easy to get hooked on that feeling of we can add so much value by solving these technical problems, and there's no limit. Like it's all software. We can invent whatever we need to invent to solve the problem. We're not constrained by anything. And that's the whole software is leading the world idea. I think there's a lot of merit to that. That's very true, and it's very exciting.
It is very exciting. It's also very fascinating in the way that you both touched upon one common theme, which was transformation. Jen, you mentioned that you were looking at the transformation. And Usman, you mentioned that you were looking at all this revolution that was happening, got you both hooked on building products and bringing that to life and helping companies and individuals. So I hear a lot about digital transformation everywhere. Our lives are being touched by it. Every enterprise, every organization is seeing digital transformation. And digital transformation means different things to different people. So, but they're all going into the same direction. They may be taking different swim lanes. So Jen, a question for you. What do you think is driving the momentum for this digital transformation that we are experiencing?
Well, I mean, just to kind of build on what you were saying, to sort of unpack the term, because it is at once a very powerful term, and then also, you know, in the absence of kind of understanding the kind of real impact of it, kind of can be empty. You know, and again, my orientation is always to lead with the people. And if you think about, you know, what companies are trying to do as they're moving in the direction of digital transformation is meet their users, whether they're customers who are transforming their behaviors to spend more of their time engaging with friends online and social networks, or getting more of their news online, or buying more of their materials online, bringing themselves online, or in the time of this pandemic, you know, having to find ways to continue to work and collaborate online. These things become an underlying catalyst for companies and businesses to step up and think about, how do I meet the needs of these users? How do I kind of seize this? How do I deepen my relationship with my users? How do I add value? And I think that then precipitates a step function changes in technology. Because you know, the systems that we used to use and the ways in which we used to do things, you know, they lack the flexibility, they lack the agility, and a lot of that is really, you know, the desire to move quickly, to deliver highly performant and highly scalable, highly secure experiences have really driven people to a place where they are thinking about, like, you know, how do I transform more of my architecture to a more nimble, more agile, more cloud-based solution.
Yeah, and the end user experience is so important because we see on a daily basis, right? I take myself a decade back. I used to print papers of maps before going anywhere, and now I have it on my phone, and all of that, as you said, like the user experience is the one driving it, and the technology just follows it. But when I look at it from, you know, from an IT professional, IT leader perspective, I look at this digital transformation, I see a big opportunity. But what does that really mean for me in my role? Is my role going to change? How's that, do you see a paradigm shift in that part?
For me, I definitely do. I mean, I think that, you know, historically, you know, when people have historically thought about the sort of role of IT, it's largely been the business cooks up some ideas, then they send a memo, send an email, send a smoke signal to the IT team who's sitting in some back office room with no windows, right? And the IT team basically takes it and they're in charge of kind of managing these sort of legacy systems. I think what we're seeing with this transformation is really the need and the drive for IT to have a seat at the table, for IT to be a collaborative partner with the business, to step back and think about, like, the art of the possible. Because the world is changing so quickly, the requirements are changing so quickly, the technology is changing so quickly that it needs to be this kind of highly iterative, highly engaged process. And so I think what you're really seeing, it's kind of interesting, you know, it's like, you know, if you look at sort of the evolution of other SaaS-based businesses like, you know, CRM and stuff like that, just migrating those businesses to the cloud made the people who own those systems much more important, much more mission critical people. Yeah. And I think the same is happening here too, with just IT professionals in general.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good parallel because I remember like sending a CRM report to someone like an analyst and saying like, build this for me versus self-serve, let me. So it's almost like instead of reacting to change, the IT professionals will be, you know, driving change in a certain way, which is amazing. Let's shift gear a little bit into, now that we understand digital transformation a little bit more, from a architecture perspective, Usman, it's changed. We're moving to the cloud.
And we shouldn't be surprised because we've seen, like, the one constant is change, right? So like, if you early asked me like, what did technology look like when you got started? You know, and the PCs took over the workplace in the 80s, right? I mean, like, you saw PC desktop, but they weren't networked. There was no LAN. It was a big deal when the LAN showed up in the 90s. And people first started thinking, hey, client server, let's keep the information on one thing. And still, it was just, you know, a file server or network print, and that was considered a major leap forward. Then you get to the 2000s, and the web comes up in a very big way, and you have this notion of a thin client. And enter right around 2010, the mobile revolution kicks in, and the SaaS revolution kicks in high gear. And the seeds were laid. You could see the seeds 10 years earlier, but it really steps up. And now, for the first time, that architecture that we had perfected, the idea of a data center. It's not just a server in the corner of the closet. It's actually full-blown data center operations, IT staff, you know, really leading edge stuff. And that's where we center our client server applications, the notion of a branch office, lease lines so that the branch offices can connect to the corporate data center in an efficient way. Suddenly, all of that doesn't match the architecture of the future. Yeah. Because first of all, the users are running around with these glass rectangles in their pocket and want access to everything all the time. And they're being trained by consumer applications that there's no reason not to expect that. Why shouldn't I have access to everything all the time? I have access to everything else all the time. Like you just said, I'm not printing out maps anymore. My phone can do it. So why can't I get access to my corporate information? And second, the revolution on the back end is also not happening in the data center. It's not on-prem software anymore. It's in the cloud. So suddenly the data center is in this very weird, awkward position where its clients are no longer inside its perimeter, and the thing they're trying to connect to are no longer in its perimeter. So what is the data center doing in the middle of this other than making things harder for everybody? Right. And so that is the architectural, that's the technical change here. But with all challenges, there's opportunity. Because like Jen said, now the person who understands this and understands that the role of IT is still just as important as ever. They still have to drive that capability. And rather than being the reactive person who's trying to jam things into the hub and spoke architecture, is how do we enable the mobile workforce, which is trying to access this massive collection of services of SaaS products, so that the IT team can make these things available in a secure way, make them in a way that's productive, continue to retain control, continue to retain all the things that are important, and maximize productivity, and become the driver, become the hero, rather than they're the gatekeeper, they're the block. And I think that, and in the same way that we saw client server, we saw PC go to client server, we saw client server go to web, the organizations that understand this first will move from the hub and spoke architecture of the data center to the to a cloud first architecture. And that means something new, some new component must come into the picture where you actually can exercise control and make things available in a secure and safe way. And that's what we're talking about, right? That's what it's really interesting.
No, it is. And so it goes from, like, I remember from my Sun Microsystem days, like stacking boxes, sizing it, and then bringing it all together, and then you have an application running on it. It used to be slow. At that time, it used to seem fast, but in today's world, it's slow. That's so agility is a big problem. You touched upon this this point about there has to be something new, right? And I hear a lot about virtual appliances, which is like taking the box and putting it in the cloud. Could that be the new?
Yeah, no, I think is my opinion answer. No, I don't think it is. I think that's a stopgap at best. There's a certain viewpoint that might make you feel, if you squint at it from 45 degrees with the sun at the right angle, you might say, this is the best of both worlds. I get a cloud application, I get to run it in my data center. That way I can ensure all my controls are met and I get my favorite app. But if you stop looking at it from that bizarre angle and just look at it square on, what you're really saying is you're DevOps for someone else's code. You're on the hook for running what somebody else developed. Why would you do that? And furthermore, speaking as a software leader of the 21st century in the 2020s, that on-prem installation, that is not what that engineering leader is waking up every morning worrying about. I guarantee you there's a cloud version, and that's where the attention is going for where she's spending her attention is the cloud service. So you don't want to be the trailing, you don't want to be the virtual appliance that is almost the afterthought, that is the stopgap. You want to lean into where these things are actually going, and where they're going is out of the data center. And so that is why virtual appliances were a very interesting stopgap, but I don't think that's the right thing. I think you'll wind up with the worst of both worlds, which is you're the DevOps team, you're on the hook for making sure that something is safe and secure and scales inside your data center, when neither of those headaches should be yours. You should be focused on how do we make this functionality available to your end users and still get the control that you want.
Well, and I think if you step back for a second too, and like just think about the moment of a digital transformation within the context of a business. Like I was talking to a customer of ours, a global 500 fashion and cosmetics brand, big transformation for them in their business right now as the entire world has gone to shelter in place. A lot of their distribution had been, through stores, and that basically kind of cratered as frankly, we weren't able to get out. But in the same period of time, over a single quarter, their e-commerce business grew 53%. Now, if I'm thinking about the poor DevOps person in the back, and like in the server room, like there's smoke coming off of the data center boxes. If if you're constrained by needing to think about and work with the capacity you have. Like in this age of digital transformation, in the moment where you need to be able on the drop of a dime to transform your e-commerce experience, to be able to bring to life, dynamic online, like cosmetic try-on experiences online that are heavily processor intensive, like the businesses are demanding that agility. And frankly, like virtual appliances, like they aren't going to keep up. They aren't going to keep up with the scale. They aren't going to give the business the agility it needs.
Yeah, so I'm almost visualizing a boardroom situation and the CEO tapping the IT leaders on the shoulder and go like, own this. This is a great business opportunity. Own this and help us take that leap into the digital transformation piece, which is great. So Usman, you mentioned there has to be something new. I know, Jen, you and your team are very fascinated with all the products that you build, trying to help build a better internet and also help the digital transformation that everyone is going through. So the bolt-on approach doesn't work. It's a misfit. We understand that. What is your team working on, and why would that be a good solution for this digital transformation?
What's the answer, Jen?
The answer is 4. In case you're wondering, the answer is 4. No, it's really interesting because it's like to step back, like. Nobody starts their life aspiring to build a bolt-on solution. Like if I take my car into a mechanic, like they're not going to be like, I just bolted it on. Like that's clearly the way to go. And like that, I think, a lot of businesses actually find themselves in a situation where kind of what got them here yesterday won't support them where they need to go. Like, another customer of ours, a Global 500, technology provider, basically over the course of, several years, they found themselves consolidating different businesses through acquisitions. And they wake up one morning and all of a sudden they're managing 5 different WAFs. And so they get these 5 different stacks that are completely like fragmented. And the complexities of managing that, the complexities of scaling that, the complexities of getting to a certain level of consistency and policy that you need to be able to do. And then being able to just be like, got to do the maintenance updates, got to do this, got to do that. Like it becomes a heavy tax on the innovation of these companies. And so, our focus has been through the course of building our highly scalable global network to really build a cloud-based distributed edge network that enables customers to kind of pass their traffic through. And as we're inspecting that traffic and returning it, we inspect it, assess it for security risk against a variety of different policies dynamically, all within one pass, instead of having to pass it through a bunch of different systems, being able to push it back through a unified, accelerated pipe back to the end user. So what we're really focusing on is building this really highly scalable, highly dynamic cloud-based edge network that provides that performance, security, and reliability so that anything you put behind it can quickly and easily realize the benefits of that. So again, part of why we're in this transformation journey with this customer is really what they're looking for is a consistent edge, a consistent plane to provide these services such that they can put all of these acquired assets, whether it's an on-prem server, a private cloud, public cloud, variety of public cloud, put that behind our service, evolve that behind our service, but really rely on our service again to provide that consistency and that control plane. And it's highly scalable and highly performant.
Yeah, and I'm going to take this back into the context of individuals who are working on this, who feel the challenge, feel the pain points on a daily basis, right? And for them, I feel like this is a great solution because once again, I want to be a driver of change. I need more time at my hand understanding business risk, business policies, and being a consultant, right? The other thing, Jen, that often, which is a reality of business, that doesn't matter how cool the product is, what's important is also the cost of it, right? And so whenever I'm thinking about the architecture that was there before versus where the world is going, I often think about cost and cost effectiveness. Can you share a little bit about your thoughts on, is this solution really more cost effective than the previous one? And
well, I think, yeah, and if you just sort of step back and like a basic, kind of lesson of economics is economies of scale, right? And if you think about sort of, we've built this massive globally distributed network through kind of, negotiating and making it building it in a way that is highly dynamic and highly cost effective. We've built boxes on our own hardware, using our own software that is very cost effective, and put those in the data center. And what that enables us to do is deliver this service and distribute those costs across a broad audience. And so you get that economies of scale. And like, honestly, we pass that forward. You know, a great example for us is DDoS mitigation. You know, historically, you know, the way that DDoS mitigation works is that when a site comes under attack, you know, the DDoS mitigation is triggered by the provider, and the site is actually charged for the absorption of the traffic that provider incurs. They're actually charged for that traffic. We, because of the economies of scale of our network, are actually able to offer unmetered DDoS mitigation because we have the capacity, we have the flexibility, we have the dynamic nature of our network such that we can absorb that, such that we only charge you for the good traffic that comes all the way through. And I think that's an incredibly powerful thing. I think the other part of it that I think about is not just an economies of scale from sort of the network and the service and the kind of the core cost, it's the carrying cost of the service, right? Like, you know, if you think about the poor person in the data center who, you know, the day the patch comes out has to sit down and patch every single one of the servers, like that's time and money and headache. But it needs to be done, and it needs to be done quickly to ensure that your system remains secure. But if you use Cloudflare, you don't have to do that because Usman is doing that for you. His team is authoring those patches, is implementing those solutions at scale. And because of the way that we've architected our solution, not only are we doing it for you, but we're able to push those changes out nearly instantaneously to the edge, so you can feel confident that you always have the most powerful, the most current, the most up-to-date performance and security solutions in your hands.
And every engineering leader already knows this. Every IT person, this is why you adopted the cloud in the first place. It's just taking that exact same algorithm, the same logic that said, wait a minute, the scalability, the agility, the efficiency, the security, all the illities and itties that you are normally worried about, and that gave you the confidence to say, actually, we're going to move this application to the cloud. We're going to use a cloud provider. All of those same functionalities and those same return on investment arguments hold true for the boxes that are in your data center that are serving infrastructure application needs, the WAFs, the load balancers, the security systems. And that is for those very same reasons. It's not a new kind of argument. It's exactly the same argument, which is why it is so powerful. You're not trying to convince somebody that there's some kind of new calculus they have to understand. Right. It is precisely the same reasons that Jen iterated that make sense for the infrastructure and for the what used to be the local data center, for that to move into the cloud. But that means that something has to be at the cloud level, at the edge of the network, that is in front of the applications and closest to the user, that is going to deliver all this functionality. And that's what we build at Cloudflare. That's why we believe we've got the right architecture for the future.
Yeah, and as Jen was talking about it, and Usman, you mentioned, like, it makes more sense for data center to move to the cloud. But also the reality is not one cloud, right? Like, there are often organizations adopting a multi-cloud approach.
That's right.
And so that edge aspect becomes even more important.
More important to be absolutely cloud agnostic. The lock-in is a very serious concern. If you're a cloud provider, you have, if you're a developer, you're always concerned. Am I is my architecture too tied to the feature set of one particular platform provider? But the edge of the network, something has to terminate the connection, right? The IP address is going somewhere. And so that is where you want that ultimate flexibility in a single pane of glass that can then very transparently front whatever requests that you have, whatever applications you have, whether they are on-prem, whether there are other cloud providers, whichever way they are going, you want that flexibility. And that is why it is exactly as you say, Arun, you want something that is very architecture neutral, very back-end neutral, in the sense that it really has no opinion on where this is. It's perfectly comfortable integrating with whatever you have on the other side. And that is a very powerful aspect of our solution.
Yeah, and I think so business risk, technology risk is one part of the other thing that I was reading an interview from the CISO of one big bank in Australia recently, and he was saying that, you know, it's not just the risk, but he's foreseeing compliance coming into the picture, and saying that there'll be certain countries who might be saying, if you're taking a cloud approach, it has to be multiple cloud, at least 2 clouds, right? So that you balance things that way. So that's very interesting. So let's go into the final aspect that I want to talk about for today's conversation, which is around, we understand the bolt-on approach doesn't work. We have the cloud, and Cloudflare is leading that transition. Usman, talk to us a little bit about what's really happening behind the scenes. What's being built? What does Jen trouble you with every day?
Trouble? Are you kidding? It's the best part of the interview. We could easily have turned this 5 minutes into the next 5 hours. I'll touch briefly on some of the things that I'm most excited on. If you look at how Cloudflare's product portfolio is architected, things that we are doing to protect our customers' infrastructure, basically the systems that they are making available to their customers. They are cloud providers themselves, and we are helping protect their infrastructure. Our new product called Magic Transit, which lets us offer them protection at the layer 3 level, meaning their IP addresses, their network. We are going to advertise it, and everything layer 3 on up, which means, you know, all the TCP applications, all the layer 7 applications, literally everything that goes across their IP addresses, Cloudflare sits in front of, provides the full suite of our protections, including things like our DDoS, which we just introduced a new technology that we're very proud of. We talked about it on our external website called FlowTrackD, which makes the edge even smarter in how it can track and mitigate particular kinds of attacks. We have a brand new firewall engine that we released recently, and the features are just pouring into that, including new policies, so that customers have tremendous control over how they can aggregate rules and how they expose them. All that is in the name of how do we make sure that customers can protect the services that they're offering to their customers. If we shift and talk about the digital transformation, the applications that were inside the customer's data center that they're making to their own users, that's where things like Cloudflare Access and our Teams product portfolio, the Cloudflare Gateway, come into place, because what it means is we are able to provide those users inside the company, and we use this ourselves. This is what was made it possible for us to no longer need a VPN inside Cloudflare when we accessed our own internal assets. And it is such a powerful and such an amazing system, because I know it's secure because it's going through the Cloudflare edge, and yet I'm accessing internal company resources. And then, of course, the bright future is serverless, right? So like, once you have an edge network that's capable of all this stuff, why are we the only ones running stuff on it? Why don't we let our customers run stuff on it? And that is Workers, right? So that means let our customers have a full-blown development environment. We just had an entire week's worth of launches, serverless week, to talk about all the great stuff that we did to let our customers write even more powerful, more sophisticated applications at the edge. So like, the future is bright, Arun. There's a lot of cool stuff going on.
And you're so right. The future is bright, and it's a very, very positive note. And I'll share with you one anecdote that you're part about Cloudflare for Teams, and the aspect, it really helps. I can tell you at an individual, it helps the productivity and efficiency. And at a previous job of mine, we had the video chat service that we were using behind a VPN. The whole user experience, going back to Jen's first point around user experience, was so horrible.
Yeah.
And transforming that, taking it out of the VPN, not having that, just boosts the it sounds small. It's a really big impact.
It's not small. It's huge. It's a really big deal. It delivers the promise of being able to compute anywhere and having the information, so that the technology should disappear into the background. The point of coming to work is to get the work done that we're all passionate and excited about, you know, not futzing with VPN credentials. And so like, that's very much the vision. That's it.
Well, that's great. I wish I had an hour, a day, a week to talk to both of you. What a brilliant tag team. And I'm so fortunate that I work with a brilliant tag team of leaders, a brilliant tag team of product and engineering team. But thank you both for joining for the conversation today. It was really fascinating, very insightful. And I think this means that it is to be continued. And we'll have you again for one of exciting episodes.
Anytime, Arun. Great. Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you for making this possible. It was a great conversation, and I look forward to the next one.